Hello folks, welcome back to the Edupedia world, and I am Abhinay Gupta. And today again we are continuing with the standards in auditing. And the standard under consideration for the lecture today is SA 500, Audit Evidence. Right? So we have already had a lecture on this topic, audit evidence, where we have seen what is audit evidence, what is the objective of this essay, right? What are the various definitions that we have covered, right? And we were actually covering the part of management expert and we left that portion in between, right? So today we'll try and we'll finish up with that portion and try and complete the entire standard, right? So let us have a brief recap of what we have seen in the previous lecture so as to enhance the continuity. So we have seen the objectivity. So what is the objective? The objective of the auditor is to design and perform audit procedures in such a way as to enable the auditor to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence, to be able to draw reasonable conclusions on which to base the auditor's opinion, right? So design the procedure, obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidences, draw a reasonable conclusion and give your opinion. Next, the definitions that you had to cover is accounting records. So we have seen what are the accounting records, all the ledgers, all the journals, all the records, right? All the contracts, all the invoices, all of these, they are accounting records, right? Then we have audit evidences, sufficiency, appropriateness and management expert. So we have seen what are audit evidences. It is accounting and other information which is used to arrive at a conclusion by the auditor, right? That helps the auditor to form a conclusion. And when we talk about appropriateness and sufficiency, we know that they are inversely proportional, and sufficiency depends on appropriateness and the ROMM. So sufficiency is the quantum. If your appropriateness is very high, your quantum can go low. If your appropriateness is low, then your quantum has to go high. Similarly, if your risk of material misstatement is high, the quantum has to go high, and if your risk of material misstatement is low, your quantum goes low. So your sufficiency, your quantum, is inversely proportional to your appropriateness but directly proportional to your ROMM, right? And appropriateness basically depends on two portions, that is reliability and the relevance, right? Then we were dealing with the topic management expert, and we know that management expert is the expert that has been involved by the management, right? These are not the experts that are involved by the auditor, because the experts that are involved by the auditor for his job, for his task to support the auditor in deriving at a conclusion, then those are auditor's expert and covered under SA 620, right? So if you go by the definition, is an individual or organization possessing expertise in the field other than accounting or auditing, whose work in that field is used by the entity to assist the entity in preparing the financial statements, right? So these are the management experts. So in the previous lecture, we have already seen how the auditor deals with the management expert, right? So when he encounters any management expert, right, or when he encounters any report given by that expert, he will have to ascertain his reliability on that expert's work, right? How does he do that? So for that, he will first have to evaluate the competence, capability and the objectivity of that expert, right? When we talk about the competence, what do we mean? We mean the nature and the level of expertise of that expert, right? So what kind of expertise does he possess, and what is the level of expertise? Till what level has he been qualified? What institute has he been qualified? What degree has he obtained, right? Then we'll have to check his capabilities. Now when we talk about capabilities, we'll see how capable is that expert to use his competence, right? So whatever things that he has learned in his institute, that he has learned to gain his degree, is he also able to apply those knowledge, those expertise in this field for our purpose, right? And third is, we'll check his objectivity. Is he biased? Is there a conflict of interest? Is his decision being influenced, right? Is there any influence on his professional or the business objectivity of the management, right, of that expert? So these are the things that we need to consider. So when it comes in the exam, you will have to write these three words: competence, capability and the objectivity, right? Then And we have also seen how will the auditor determine the competence, capability, and objectivity. For that, if he has any personal experience with that expert, then he'll use his personal experience. If you know that, yeah, this is a good expert and I've already used his work on other clients and I can rely on his work, so he'll rely on the work. Otherwise, oh, no, no, no. 2 clients we have seen, there was a big mess because of this expert. He always goes with something wrong. I'll have to recheck his work, reconfirm. Yeah, this involvement of this expert has increased my task. That is the kind of thinking that you'll have, right? Then you'll have a discussion with the expert. What did you use? How did you use? Where did you qualify? What expertise do you have? How long experience do you have? Right? Then if there are other people who have had an experience with this expert, you will go and discuss with those people. Other people means other known to the auditor, right? If there is any published book, any published document from this expert, you will see the reference to that. Is it acceptable in the market? Are people relying on it? Is it good? Is it worth? And then at the end, if nothing works out, you will hire an expert to judge the capability of that expert, right? You will have an expert with you whose basic function is to judge their capability. So once you have seen that, yeah, this expert is capable, competent, and objective, right? Then what? Okay, if he is, but did he do his job accurately over here? Did he perform his task, the task that was given to him? Did he perform it with determination? Did he apply those capabilities and competence? Right? We'll see what is the kind of work he has performed. So we will understand the expert's work. We'll gain the understanding. How do we see that? First, we'll see if that work actually falls in the area of expertise of this expert. If yes, well and good. We'll see that what are the professional standards that he has applied. What are the regulatory and legal requirements that he has fulfilled? Because if we have involved an expert into any field, then that field may, like for in auditing we study the standards on auditing. For accounting we see the accounting standards, right? So there are basically standards in various professions, right? The standards that we fall back on, that we reflect to. So if there are certain standards for the evaluation of the work that the management expert is undertaking, then did he follow those professional standards or legal requirements, right? Then if he has made some assumptions, because if the data are very clear, it is easier for the auditor also to determine, right? But if it is not very clear, that is when we involve an expert. So that expert also takes in some certain assumptions, right? So what are the kind of assumptions that he has taken? What is the method that he has used for calculating, right? And we'll see whether the assumption or the method that he has applied is generally accepted in the field in which the expertise deals, right? If there was someone else, he would have also applied these methods. It is a general accepted principle, right? If the assumptions and methods are generally accepted, we are okay with it, right? And at last we'll see, okay, the job that he is performing, good to go, I rely on that. But the data that he is using, is that data correct? Because if the data on the first hand is not correct, then whatever procedure he applies, the conclusion will always be wrong. So you will also have to check that the data that is given to that expert, is that data correct, right? So for example, I'll share an experience with you. When I was at my previous client, right, that was a manufacturing entity. Over there they had employed an actuary to determine the gratuity, leave encashment and these kind of expenses for the employees. So when they send the data to the actuary, right, they send them the entire head count, what is the basic salary, the entire structure of the salary, what is the leave that they have taken, right, what are the number of rotations that they had, what are the number of holidays that they have. All these kinds of data are being given to the actuary, right? So these data before going to the actuary was actually checked by me. I checked it, that okay, you say that you have these many head counts, do the details that you send to the actuary contain the details of all those head count? I see whether there is any fictitious entry, right? Is there any duplicate entry, that if there are 156 employees and you give the data of 150 employees and 6 employees, you again repeat it, because that will again change the valuation, right? So I'll check the other procedure that I have already applied, right, during my checking of the payroll. I will apply those and I'll see that yes, the data that was given to me that I have checked and the data that is being sent to the actuary are the same. right? That is, I have to do that. Why? Because after I get the job done from the actuary, that actuary was a very famous actuary in Gurgaon, right? Almost all the listed clients over there, they use the work of that expert. So reliability on the work of expert was not an issue over there. But over there, if there was something that I actually needed to check, is the data that was being sent to the actuary. And trust me, I had to get the report altered. Altered in the sense, the report that was originally given to me was not accurate. Why? Because the data that was sent was faulty. Then they had to again request that expert to re-perform his calculations and give it to me. And when I asked him the kinds of assumptions he had made, the data that he has used, right, the inflation index in the market, so he sent me the link from the website from where he has got those data, and also the publications in the market, that yeah, this is from where I have taken this percentage, this is from where I have given this formula. And then I could also check it on the websites. Those are paid websites, not all of you get an access to that. I could check it on those websites that okay, the data that he has used is the current figure in the economy, right? So you always have to judge those things before you move ahead with that, right? Okay, the next part is, once you have evaluated, once you have understood the work of the expert, okay, what he is doing, then you will have to also evaluate whether the work that he is doing is appropriate, and whether that is appropriate for that particular assertion that I am into, right? So I will judge the relevance and reasonableness of the expert's findings and the conclusions, and I'll see that okay, there are certain audit evidences that I have gathered, and these are the evidences that has been given to me by the expert. So I'll try to reconcile the evidences, and if both the evidence narrate the same story, I'll say okay, the evidences are consistent. But if the evidences that I have gathered, if they tell me a different story, a story which is different from the story that the evidences of the expert tell me, then I'll have to see that either the evidences given by the experts are not appropriate, or the evidences that I have collected are not appropriate. So I'll have to recheck both of it then, right? Then I'll see whether the data or the result that has been given by the expert has actually been reflected in the financial statement. There can be possibility, okay, management tells me he has calculated this figure and this should be the expense this year for the employee, and he showed it to me, I checked everything, and at last what we find is that management did not upload it or did not edit the data that they had already entered in the financials. They left it to be the old data. So what was the relevance of getting the work done by the expert, right? Then I'll also see the relevance and the reasonableness of the assumptions and the methods that he has applied. I'll apply my own brain to see. If I don't understand, I'll ask the expert, okay, tell me why have you applied this assumption. I would like to learn, I would like to know, right? Then the relevance, completeness and the accuracy of the source data, right? So what is the difference between these 2 points? Understanding of the expert's work and evaluating the appropriateness of expert work. When we talk about the understanding of expert's work, we only see what are the kinds of work he has done, and when we are evaluating it, we'll see whether that work that he has done is accurate, is correct. Over there we have seen that yeah, we will see the nature of the internal and external record or the data that has been sent. Over here we'll see the completeness, accuracy and the relevance of the data as well, right? So in the second part we are actually going into the detailed calculation, into the detailed consideration of the same, right? So now I hope the entire topic of the management expert is clear to you, right? That was one of the main topic of this standard, so we had to devote a lot of time on that, right? So if it is clear with you, we move on to the next topic, which is audit procedure to obtain audit evidences. So if this is clear with you, we move on to the next topic, which is the audit procedure to obtain audit evidences. So basically, what are the procedures that you follow to obtain the evidences in the audit? In general, forget about this essay, what we have done with the management expert, what we have done with everything. Those portions are over, right? Now you come down to what are the procedures you generally follow whenever you go on the client. I assume that the students who are sitting in front of me, the students who are actually viewing this video, they are not dummy students. They're going to the office, they're performing audit, and they're learning and the 3 years that has been given for your articleship is being utilized for the right purpose, right? So in that context, I would ask you the questions based on that. So what are the kinds of procedures you follow when you go to the client? There are two basic procedures that you always follow. That is the compliance and the substantive procedure. Now what is the compliance procedure? That is a test of controls. Test of internal controls, whether the internal controls are working effectively or not, or whether the internal controls are present on the first hand. Right? After TOC, what is the other thing that you also perform is the TOD, test of details. So basically, if you are vouching the sales and the purchases, so TOC and TOD are the basic things that you prepare. TOC with around 25-30 samples. That is a general procedure that even we follow in the Big Fours, because if we have selected 30, 35, 40 samples, 50 samples, that depends on the size of the entity also, right? Then we see that okay, in 50 samples we have checked the controls. If it is working well with these 50 samples, it would be working well with other samples as well. And then we go on to check the details. For details, okay, we take a larger number of data, larger number of samples, right? I would not be able to say what is the exact quantity of sample that we take, because we derive the sample from the software that we use, that is IDEA, right? We feed in the dump, we feed in all the details, all the parameters, and then the software itself calculates the sample and throws the sample. Okay, this is the sample you need to check, this is the sample you need to check. So whatever quantity of sample it gives, we'll check that. So that is a separate check. In that check, we'll check we will see the details of that individual transaction. We'll check the invoice, we'll check the amount, we'll check the rate of interest, we'll check the date, we'll check the authorization, right? We'll check whether it is within the limits. We'll check the codes and the procedures. Are the same item being sold? What are the rates for that item? Right? So that is what we check in the test of details. When we are checking the controls, we'll check whether it has gone through the proper authorization panel, whether the invoice has been raised, whether vouchers have been prepared, whether the vouchers have been signed, right? So these are the things that we check while we are testing the controls. So there are two things: test of controls, test of details. Then you also do the risk assessment procedures, right? Now that is a very wide thing. How do you assess the risk, right? We have a separate essay on that we have already covered. And then we have, in the substantive procedure, we have one more part apart from TOD, that is substantive analytical procedure. Now what is analytical procedure? In analytical procedure, basically what you do is you get into a comparative study of relations. You study the relation, you study the movement along with the industry, you study the relation with the previous year, you study the relation with any other thing, right? So basically, when we talk about audit procedures to obtain audit evidences, we have these following procedures: risk assessment procedures, test of controls, test of details, substantive analytical procedures, which is SAP, right? Clear with that? So these are basically audit procedures that we follow. And these procedures, if you ask me, then we have already covered these procedures when we were covering essay 315, 330 and so on, right? We have seen about the risk assessment procedure over there, the test of control, the test of detail, the compliance and the substantive procedures, right? So all these things have been done over there. So when we talk about, if somebody is confused with what substantive analytical procedure is, then basically try and understand. You at our client, what we do is we prepare an ARD, analytical review document. I hope most of you also do it at your client, right? That is the basic thing that you do when you go for an audit. That is an overall evaluation. What you do is you pick up the financial statements of the previous year and the financial statement, draft financial statement that has been given to you by the management in the current year, right? Then you pick up separately the financial statement, that is the balance sheet and the P&L account. And then with each item of balance sheet, the non-current liability, current liability, assets and non-current and current assets, you have the similar heads in the previous year as well. That your plant and machinery existed, land and building existed, such and such loan existed, right? These are the reserves that existed. So everything over there, all the expense, all the balance sheet items, you plot it down, and then you plot the figures aside to that, the figures of the previous year and the figures of the current year, and then you see what is the variance, and then you will have to reason out. And then we discuss with the management what is the reason of the variance. We have not started the audit, we are not doing the audit, but overall we are trying to understand that okay, if my assets have gone up by 70%. What is the reason? Did you buy some new assets, fixed assets, or have you revalued them? If you have revalued them, how did it go up so high? Did you revalue it after a long time? What is the difference? Right, and they'll explain. No, so the 50% increase is because of the new machinery that we have installed, and the rest 20% is because of the revaluation, and the revaluation was done on the basis of stamp duty. We say, okay, now we understand. The liabilities, they have gone up by again 30%. What has happened? So we have taken an additional loan this year. This was required for this purpose. That is the kind of understanding that we gain from the client, right? So that is analytical review procedure. You compare the current year financial with the previous year financial. Similarly, you plot down all the items of P&L account. Okay, this expenditure, your business and promotion expenditure, if you see, then there is a downfall of around 90%. Last year you had around 1.5 crore business promotion expenditure. This year it's only around 15-20 lakhs. So what was something very specific in the previous year that you have done and you did not do it this year? Then they say, so we had a promotional activity, we had an event managed in Mauritius, so for that we had a lot of expenditure that we had to do. So there was an exhibition, and for that we went. Okay, I got the answer. Right? So basically your analytical review procedure is very important for these aspects, that you understand, okay, these are the straightforward things that we have seen, so we don't need to get into the detail. But otherwise, if there are fluctuations that the management is not able to explain, then that raises the suspectability, and there is when we apply the professional judgment and professional skepticism. Right? So are you clear with the substantive analytical procedure? This is the brief short example that I have taken. We will do it in detail in the relevant standards, right? And if you ask me what is the relevant standard for that, then it is SA 520, right? So the details of the analytical procedure will be covered in SA 520. So over here, this is the only thing that I needed to give to you for the understanding, that yeah, these are the procedures that we basically perform to gather the audit evidences, right? So we'll end our lecture today over here, and the last part, that is what are the methods to obtain audit evidences, that will be covered in the next lecture along with the comparative study, right? So stay tuned for the lecture. This is Abhinay Gupta signing off. Thank you. Bye bye.